Picture yourself walking through an American shopping mall in 1985. Something looks different. The crowd streaming past Orange Julius and the Gap don't match what you'd see today. Look closer at the family photos from that decade, sitting in your parents' attic. The high school yearbooks, the beach snapshots, the wedding albums. Americans in the 1980s were dramatically thinner than we are now, not just a little lighter. We're talking about a completely different physical reality. In 1980, roughly 15% of American adults qualified as obese. By 2020, that number had exploded past 42%. The average American woman in 1985 weighed about 140 pounds. Today, she weighs 170. Men went from 173 pounds to 198. This wasn't some golden age of gym culture or celery juice cleanses. Jane Fonda aerobics videos were a thing, sure, but most people weren't doing them. The fitness boom existed at the margins, not as a mass movement. So what actually kept people slim? The answer has nothing to do with willpower or personal virtue. It's buried in drive-through culture that hadn't fully formed yet. Portion sizes that would look like kids' meals today, and a food landscape so different from ours that stepping into a 1985 supermarket would feel like visiting another country. And number 3 on this list? It's going to completely change how you think about why Americans gain weight. If you want to understand how our food system went off the rails and what you can actually do about it, hit that subscribe button, because we're diving deep into this. Here's something that'll blow your mind. McDonald's existed in the 80s. Obviously, they'd been around since the 50s. But the relationship Americans had with McDonald's in 1985 versus 2025 is night and day. In 1980, there were about 6,200 McDonald's locations in the entire United States. Sounds like a lot, right? Today, there are over 13,000. But the real story isn't the raw numbers. It's density and convenience. In small-town America in 1985, you might have one McDonald's on the edge of town, not 3 within a 5-mile radius like today. Cities had them, sure, but the saturation point hadn't hit yet. The drive-through existed, but it was slow, really slow. No computerized order systems. No headsets with multiple order lanes. You pulled up, yelled your order at a speaker that made everything sound like static, waited while someone hand-wrote on a pad, then crawled forward to pay and pick up. The whole process could take 15 minutes easy. Compare that to today's drive-thrus engineered to move cars through in under 3 minutes. Because it took so long and wasn't everywhere, grabbing fast food wasn't the default option it is today. It was still somewhat special. Something you did maybe once a week, if that. Families would pile into the station wagon on Friday night and go to McDonald's as a treat. Not Tuesday lunch. Not Wednesday dinner, because nobody felt like cooking. Friday night, planned in advance. And the variety? Forget about it. McDonald's menu in 1985 was shockingly limited. Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, Big Macs, Filet-O-Fish, fries, shakes, soft drinks. That was basically it. No chicken nuggets until 1983. No breakfast menu in most locations. No salads, no wraps, no McFlurries, no McCafe specialty coffees. You couldn't customize everything. Special orders genuinely did upset them because the whole system was built around standardization and speed. Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, they all existed but in way smaller numbers. Subway had maybe 200 locations compared to 20,000 today. The idea of having 5 different fast food options within walking distance of each other simply didn't exist outside major cities. You made do with what was there, and often what was there was nothing. Pizza delivery was a thing, but barely. Domino's was small. Pizza Hut had some delivery, but their big thing was dine-in restaurants with salad bars and red plastic cups. You couldn't pull out your phone and have literally any cuisine delivered to your door in 30 minutes. That technology didn't exist. If you wanted food, you had 3 choices. Make it yourself, sit down in a restaurant, or drive to pick something up. The friction mattered. When getting fast food required get in the car, driving somewhere, waiting in line, and driving back, you just didn't do it as often. The path of least resistance was cooking at home. Today, the path of least resistance is tapping an app, Chain restaurant existed. Applebee's, Chili's, TGI Fridays, they were around. But casual dining wasn't a cheap, everyday option it would become. Going to Applebee's in 1985 was still dining out, with dining out prices. A family of four could easily spend $40 or $50, which in 1985 dollars was serious money. Most families couldn't afford to do that weekly, so they didn't. In 1985, the average American ate out 3.7 times per week, including all meals and snacks. By 2019, that number was 5.9 times per week. That's an extra 2 meals out every single week. Multiply that across 52 weeks and 330 million people, and you start seeing why America's waistline exploded. Fast food was still relatively slow. Delivery was limited. Restaurants were expensive. This created friction, and friction limited consumption. Okay, here's where it gets wild. In 1985, a McDonald's small drink was 12 ounces. A large was 16 ounces. Today, a small is 16 ounces and a large is 30. The medium didn't even exist back then, because the largest size they sold is now the smallest size they sell. Think about that. The drink that was their biggest offering would be their kid's size today. A small order of McDonald's fries in 1985 was 2.4 ounces. Today's small is 2.6 ounces. Okay, not that different. But people ordered small in 1985. The large fries in 1985 was 3.5 ounces. Today's large is 5.9 ounces. That's 68% more fries. And way more people order large now because it's positioned as the default, not an indulgence. The Big Mac? Basically the same size. But combo meals changed everything. The McDonald's value meal didn't exist until 1988. Before that, you ordered items separately. You'd get a burger, maybe fries, maybe a drink, but there was no psychological or economic push to get all three. The bundle deal that makes you feel like you're getting a bargain for buying more food didn't exist. Sit-down restaurants were even more dramatic. Research from public health departments compared average meal sizes from chain restaurants in 1985 to today. Pasta portions increased 480%. Steaks went from 8 ounces to 12 or 16 ounces as standard. Cheesecake Factory didn't exist yet, but when they opened in 1978, their original portions were maybe half of what they serve today. The plates themselves were smaller. In the 1980s, a standard dinner plate measured 9 inches across. Today's dinner plates are typically 11 or 12 inches. That doesn't sound like much, but area increases with the square of the radius. An 11-inch plate has 50% more area than a 9-inch plate. Bigger plates mean bigger portions because we fill the space available. Home cooking reflected these norms. Cookbooks from the 80s specified portion sizes that seem tiny now. A serving of meat was 3 to 4 ounces, about the size of a deck of cards. Today's meat servings easily hit 8 ounces or more. Half a cup of rice or pasta was standard. Now we pile on 2 cups without thinking. Snack packaging was smaller too. A bag of chips was 1 ounce, maybe 1.5. Enough for a snack, not enough to mindlessly plow through while watching TV. Candy bars weighed about 1.5 ounces compared to 2 or 3 ounces today. Even soda cans were smaller in the early 80s before the 12-ounce became standard. Movie theater popcorn in 1980. A large was about 6 cups. Today's large can be 20 cups. 20 cups. That's not an indulgence, that's a feed bag. And the bucket is so big it has a cup holder built into it, because they know you're also buying a gallon of Coke. The bagel thing is incredible. New York bagels in 1980 weighed 2 to 3 ounces. They were dense and chewy, but not massive. Walk into any bagel shop today, and you're getting 5 or 6 ounces minimum. That's double the calories before you add cream cheese, which also comes in portions twice as large. Muffins went from 1.5 ounces to 5 ounces or more. Cookies doubled in size. A slice of pizza in 1985 was a reasonable triangle. Today's pizza slices in New York or Chicago are structural engineering projects that require folding techniques just to eat. Why did this happen? Competition. Restaurants figured out they could attract customers by offering more food for the same price or slightly higher prices. Once one plays supersized, Everyone else had to follow or look stingy. It became an arms race of portion inflation. And Americans adapted by thinking these massive portions were normal. But in 1985, normal meant smaller plates, smaller servings, and the radical idea that you didn't need to eat until you were uncomfortably full. Nobody was walking around hangry or deprived. They just ate reasonable amounts because that's what was available and expected. All right, here we go. Number 3. The one that genuinely shocked me when I researched this. It's going to change how you look at every food label for the rest of your life. In 1985, the average American consumed about 75 pounds of added sugar per year. By 2000, that number hit 152 pounds. Let me say that again. We doubled our sugar consumption in 15 years. Today, we're around 130 pounds per person per year, down slightly, but still catastrophically high. But it wasn't just that we ate more sugar. The food industry changed where sugar was hiding. In the 1980s, sugar was in obviously sweet things. Candy, cookies, cake, ice cream, soda. You knew when you were eating sugar. Then came the dark turn. In the 1980s, and especially the 1990s, food manufacturers discovered they could use high fructose corn syrup to make literally everything more palatable and more addictive. They started putting sugar in foods you'd never expect. Bread, salad dressing, pasta sauce, crackers, peanut butter, soup. Even salt had dextrose added to keep it flowing. High fructose corn syrup became dirt cheap in the late 70s and early 80s thanks to subsidies and processing improvements. Food scientists ran tests and found that adding a little sweetness to everything made people eat more and come back for more. It triggered reward centers in the brain. It overrode natural satiety signals. It was a gold mine. Look at bread. Actual bread from a bakery in 1985 had flour, water, yeast, salt. That's it. Maybe a tiny bit of sugar to feed the yeast. We're talking a teaspoon per loaf. Pick up a loaf of commercial sandwich bread today and sugar or high fructose corn syrup is the third or fourth ingredient. Each slice contains 2 to 4 grams of added sugar. Pasta sauce. In 1985, ragu had some sugar, but it was minimal. Today's ragu has more sugar per serving than some cookies. A half-cup serving contains 12 grams of sugar, equivalent to 3 teaspoons. You're eating sugar with your spaghetti, and you don't even realize it. Yogurt is maybe the most evil example. In 1985, yogurt was this kind of hippie health food that tasted tangy and sour. Most people didn't eat it. Then manufacturers started loading it with sugar to make it palatable to mainstream Americans. Today's fruit-flavored yogurt cups contain 20 to 30 grams of sugar. That's more than a Snickers bar. You're eating candy for breakfast thinking it's healthy. Granola bars didn't really exist in 1985. When they became popular in the late 80s and 90s, they were marketed as healthy, natural, wholesome snacks. Meanwhile, they contain more sugar than candy bars, just with some oats mixed in. The health halo let people eat them guilt-free, sometimes multiple times a day. Salad dressing. You know how ranch dressing became America's favorite in the 1990s? Part of that was sugar. Hidden Valley Ranch has about 1 gram of sugar per 2 tablespoons, but most people use 4 to 6 tablespoons. Other dressings are worse. Some contain 5 grams of sugar per serving. You're dumping liquid candy on your vegetables. The beverage industry went absolutely insane with this. In 1985, Coca-Cola was Coca-Cola. Pepsi was Pepsi. Sprite was Sprite. The variety of sugary drinks was limited. By the 2000s, every gas station had a wall of coolers with 200 different beverages, almost all loaded with sugar or artificial sweeteners. Gatorade became an everyday drink instead of something athletes used. Vitamin water convinced people they were being healthy while drinking 32 grams of sugar. Coffee culture exploded in the 90s with Starbucks. Black coffee has 0 calories. A Starbucks Frappuccino has 50 to 80 grams of sugar. That's like drinking 3 Cokes. But it's coffee, so it feels like a normal beverage, not a dessert. People started consuming these daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Sugar is uniquely fattening. Your body processes it differently than other calories. When you eat sugar, especially fructose. Your liver converts it directly to fat. It spikes your insulin, which tells your body to store energy as fat. It doesn't satisfy hunger the way protein or even regular carbs do, so you keep eating. Worse, sugar is literally addictive. Brain scans show that sugar activates the same reward pathways as cocaine. The more you eat, the more you want. Food companies know this. They employ scientists specifically to find the bliss point, the exact amount of sugar that maximizes cravings without being so sweet it's off-putting. In 1985, this technology was primitive. By 2000, it was refined to an art form. Every processed food was engineered to be maximally craveable. The combination of sugar, salt, and fat in precise ratios designed by food scientists to override your body's natural stop eating signals. Think about Doritos. Original Doritos from the 70s and 80s were corn chips with some seasoning. Today's Doritos are the product of years of research into flavor layering, mouthfeel, and the exact crunch frequency that triggers maximum satisfaction. They're designed so your brain never quite gets satisfied, so you eat the whole bag. This is why number 3 is the shocking one. It's not that Americans suddenly got lazy or gluttonous. The food itself changed at a molecular level. Products were deliberately engineered to be addictive, to override satiety, and to make you consume more than your body needs. And sugar was a weapon of choice because it was cheap, effective, and you couldn't taste it in half the things it was hiding in. In the 1980s, you could avoid sugar by avoiding obvious sweets. Today, you have to cook literally everything from scratch using whole ingredients just to escape it. Not a smoke-filled room of executives plotting to make America fat. Just economic incentives pushing food companies to make products more addictive. And sugar was the cheapest, most effective way to do it. Nobody in 1985 was tracking their steps or bragging about closing their Apple Watch rings. You know why? Because movement wasn't exercise. It was just living. Think about shopping. In 1985, you couldn't order everything from Amazon Prime. You wanted new shoes, you went to a shoe store. You needed a book, you went to a bookstore and browsed the shelves. Groceries meant walking through a supermarket, up and down every aisle, pushing a cart. The average grocery shopping trip involved maybe a mile of walking, easy. And you did that twice a week minimum. Malls were the center of American social life. Teenagers went to the mall to hang out, which meant walking around for hours. Adults went to the mall for shopping, walking from store to store. You'd park in one spot and log serious distance walking the corridors, going up and down escalators, browsing. A 3-hour mall trip could mean 3 miles of walking without even noticing. Work required more movement too. Offices in the 80s ran on paper. You needed to file something, you walked to the filing room. You wanted to talk to someone, you walked to their desk. No email, no Slack, no Zoom calls. Communication meant getting up and moving around the building. Secretaries and assistants were constantly up and down, delivering messages, grabbing files, running errands. Banking meant going to the bank. You couldn't deposit checks with your phone. You got in line, waited, handed your check to a teller. Same with paying bills. You wrote checks, put them in envelopes, walked them to a mailbox. Or you went to a utility company's office and paid in person. Kids in the 80s played outside. Not sometimes. Basically every day after school, unless it was pouring rain. They rode bikes around neighborhoods, played pickup basketball, walked to friends' houses. The idea of scheduling playdates and driving kids to structured activities wasn't mainstream yet. You just send your kids outside, and they figure out what to do. Television existed, obviously, but only 3 major networks plus PBS and maybe some local channels. Programming ended at midnight or 1 a.m. After that, nothing but static or test patterns. You couldn't binge watch anything because episodes came on once a week. If you missed it, you missed it. No DVR, no streaming. This forced people toward other activities that often involved movement. Video games existed, but were primitive. Atari 2600 was a big thing in the early 80s, then Nintendo in the mid to late 80s. Fun for an hour or two, but nowhere near addictive enough to keep you on the couch all day. The graphics were so basic and the gameplay so simple that kids got bored and went outside. Home maintenance and chores required physical effort. Pushing a manual lawnmower, raking leaves, washing the car by hand, hanging laundry outside to dry. Even vacuum cleaners were these heavy beasts you had to muscle around. Cleaning a house actually burned calories. Remote controls existed, but weren't universal. Want to change the channel? Get up and turn the knob. Adjust the volume? Walk over to the TV. Sounds ridiculous now, but it added up. You get up and down 20 or 30 times during an evening of watching television. People still walk places too. Not everywhere. America was already car dependent. But more than today, suburban developments were smaller and less spread out. You might walk to a corner store for milk or cigarettes. Kids walk to school in groups. The culture of driving children 200 yards to the bus stop wasn't normalized yet. Workplace physical activity was way higher. Manufacturing still employed millions of Americans in jobs that required standing, lifting, carrying, and moving. Even service jobs involved more movement. Retail workers were on their feet all day, constantly moving around the store. Waitresses walked miles per shift. Stockroom work meant lifting and hauling boxes. Dancing was still a thing people did. Not professionally, just socially. Clubs, parties, weddings. People actually danced, like moving their bodies to music for hours, not just swaying. Real dancing that elevated heart rates. The generation that came of age in the 70s and 80s when dancing regularly as a standard social activity. Add it all up. Walking around stores, moving around the office, kids playing outside, household chores, dancing, standing up to change the channel. An average American in 1985 probably burned 200 to 400 more calories per day through daily movement compared to today. That's a pound of fat loss every 10 to 20 days just from incidental activity. They weren't trying to exercise. They didn't think about fitness. They were just living in a world that hadn't yet been optimized for complete sedentary convenience. Every friction point we've eliminated in the name of efficiency, every innovation that lets you do things without getting up, it all came at a cost. The cost was movement, and movement was what kept people from gaining weight. People just didn't snack constantly. And I don't mean they had more willpower. The entire infrastructure of constant snacking simply wasn't built yet. Think about when and where you could buy food in 1985. Convenience stores existed. Sure. 7-Eleven, Circle K, local joints. But there were way fewer of them, and they were actually for convenience for emergencies, not lifestyle snacking hubs. You bought milk or bread or cigarettes. Maybe a Slurpee on a hot day. But the concept of browsing a convenience store for snacks multiple times a day wasn't normalized. Vending machines existed in workplaces and schools, but the variety was limited. Chips, candy bars, maybe crackers. That's it. No healthy options. No protein bars. Number 47 different flavors of everything. And vending machines weren't everywhere. You'd find one in the break room. Today, there are vending machines every 50 feet in some buildings. The whole idea of grazing throughout the day was considered kind of weird. You ate 3 meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Maybe a snack after school, if you were a kid. But constant eating between meals? That was seen as lacking self-control or not being raised right. Your parents would literally tell you to stop spoiling your appetite. Workplace snacking culture didn't exist. Offices didn't have fully stocked kitchens with free snacks and drinks like tech companies do today. You brought a packed lunch or went out to eat. Some people kept a candy dish on their desk, but that was more for visitors and constant personal grazing. The idea of eating at your desk while working was actually considered unprofessional in many places. Kids, snacking was way more controlled. Your mom bought 1 box of cookies, maybe a bag of chips for the whole week. When it was gone, it was gone. No emergency runs to restock the pantry because Timmy wanted more Oreos. The grocery budget was fixed, and snack foods were a small part of it. You got what you got. School vending machines and snack sales existed, but were limited. Maybe you could buy a cookie at lunch. But schools didn't have vending machines accessible all day, and they definitely didn't have a variety we see now. No energy drinks. No supersized candy bars. Just basic stuff in small quantities. Gas stations in 1985 were places you bought gas. That's it. Maybe there was a bathroom. Maybe a couple vending machines outside. But the massive convenience store attached to every gas station with thousands of snack options and a fountain drink station the size of a compact car, that came later. Coffee culture was minimal. People drank coffee, sure, but it was coffee, not a dessert disguised as coffee with 500 calories of sugar and whipped cream. The Starbucks explosion of the 90s and 2000s created a whole new category of socially acceptable caloric intake. Grabbing a venti caramel macchiato became a twice-daily ritual for millions of people, adding 600 calories a day that didn't register as food. The variety of snack foods was way smaller. Go to a supermarket in 1985, and the chip aisle had maybe 20 options. Lay's, Ruffles, Doritos, Fritos, a couple others, each in 2 or 3 flavors. Today's chip aisle has 200 options. Same with cookies, crackers, candy. The explosion of variety meant there was always something new to try, always a reason to buy more. Portion control was built into how snacks were sold. Cookies came in packages that were intended to last. You'd buy a package of Oreos, and it would sit in the pantry for a week or 2. Chips came in small bags, maybe 6 ounces for a family size. Compare that to today's party-size bags that are 2 or 3 pounds and marketed to individuals. The protein bar industry didn't exist. Power bars came out in 1986, but were for serious athletes. The idea that regular people would eat concentrated nutrition bars as snacks multiple times a day wasn't a thing. Today, the protein bar market is worth billions, and people treat them like candy bars with a health halo. Smoothie culture didn't exist either. Juice bars were rare. Nobody was blending up 600-calorie fruit smoothies and calling them healthy snacks. You drank juice from a small glass with breakfast. That was it. The idea of consuming blended fruit drinks throughout the day would have seemed bizarre. The marketing around snacking was different too. Companies weren't telling you to snack all day to keep your metabolism going or maintain energy levels. That pseudo-scientific justification for constant eating came later. In the 80s, snacks were treats. Period. Not health foods, not metabolism boosters, not essential nutrition. Just treats that you had sometimes. Americans in 1985 probably consumed 300 to 500 fewer calories per day just from not constantly snacking. Not because they were better people. Because the food environment didn't support it. Stores had limited hours. Variety was limited. Social norms discouraged it. By 2000, everything had changed. 24-hour stores, vending machines everywhere, a snack industry that spent billions marketing constant consumption, and social norms that shifted to make eating all day completely normal. That difference alone explains a huge chunk of why Americans gain weight. Let's talk about money. In 1985, Americans spent about 14% of their disposable income on food. Today, it's closer to 10%. That might sound like food got cheaper, which it did in some ways. But what actually happened is way more complicated and explains a lot about portion sizes and waste. Food in 1985 felt expensive because it was a much bigger line item in the family budget. Families shopped carefully, planned meals, bought what they needed. You didn't just throw random stuff in the cart because it looked good. Every item was a conscious decision because grocery money was tight for most families. Waste was basically unthinkable. You finished what was on your plate because throwing away food meant throwing away money. Leftovers weren't optional. They were tomorrow's lunch. Families genuinely planned meals around using up what was already in the house. That chicken carcass became soup. Those vegetables got made into fried rice. Nothing went in the trash if it could be eaten. Restaurant meals were genuinely expensive relative to income. Taking a family of 4 to a sit-down restaurant could cost $30 to $50 in 1985 dollars, which was real money. Most families couldn't afford to do that weekly. So eating out was special, and when you did it, you didn't order crazy amounts because every item on the menu represented dollars you were spending. Fast food was cheaper than sit-down restaurants, but still not dirt cheap. A McDonald's meal was maybe $3 or $4, which doesn't sound like much. But adjusted for inflation, that's $8 to $10 in today's money. You could still get McDonald's meal today for $8 to $10, meaning fast food has actually gotten cheaper relative to other prices. This created natural portion control through economics. You bought what you could afford, which was often less than what you might want. Supersizing didn't make sense when every extra ounce cost money. The value meal concept was in its infancy. Mostly you just bought individual items and made them work. Grocery shopping involved actual budgeting. Women, because it was mostly women doing this labor, would literally add up prices, as they wanted to make sure they didn't go over budget. Calculators existed, but a lot of people did mental math. This meant discipline. No impulse buys. No grabbing every interesting thing you saw. The types of food people bought reflected economic reality too. Processed convenience foods were actually more expensive than cooking from scratch in the 80s. A box of hamburger helper cost more per serving than just making your own ground beef and pasta. Frozen dinners were premium items, not everyday staples. Economic incentives pushed people toward home cooking with basic ingredients. Family sizes were often larger in the 80s, meaning food had to stretch. 3 or 4 kids meant making one chicken feed 6 people across 2 meals. This was normal. Nobody expected massive individual portions. The concept of everyone getting their own personal whatever didn't exist for most families. The psychology of scarcity mattered. Even families who weren't poor remember harder times. The generation raising kids in the 80s had parents who lived through Depression or World War II rationing. The mentality of not wasting food was deeply ingrained. You didn't throw away half a hamburger just because you were full. You saved it. Food is cheaper relative to income now. Most people don't budget grocery shopping the way they did. Throwing away food feels bad, but it doesn't hurt financially like it used to. Restaurants serve portions so massive that wasting food is inevitable. The economic pressure to avoid waste has disappeared for most Americans. When food is precious, you're careful with it. You buy appropriate amounts. You eat appropriate portions. When food is cheap and abundant, you buy too much, eat too much, waste too much. The economics of scarcity created natural limits that disappeared as food got cheaper. 6 reasons Americans were slim in the 1980s. And number 3, the deliberate weaponization of sugar, really is the shocking one that changes everything. But none of these reasons had anything to do with personal virtue or willpower. Americans in 1985 weren't morally superior. They didn't have better self-control. They just lived in a completely different food environment that made staying slim the path of least resistance. Fast food was less convenient. Portions were smaller. Sugar wasn't hiding in everything. Daily life required movement. Snacking culture didn't exist. Economic pressure limited consumption. All of these created a system where maintaining a healthy weight happened naturally without thinking about it. What changed wasn't Americans. What changed was everything around them. The food industry figured out how to make products more addictive. Restaurants figured out that bigger portions attracted customers. Technology eliminated movement from daily life. Economic abundance removed constraints. The entire environment shifted to promote overconsumption. This is why the modern obesity epidemic isn't about personal failure. It's about systemic change. You're not weak for struggling with weight in 2025. You're a normal human being responding normally to an environment specifically engineered to make you overeat. Your grandparents weren't stronger than you. They just lived in a world that hadn't been optimized for making people fat. What can you do with this information? Well, you can't turn back time. You can't recreate the 1985 food environment, but you can be aware of what's happening. You can read labels and see the sugar hiding in things that shouldn't be sweet. You can recognize that supersized portions aren't normal, they're marketing. You can build movement back into your life intentionally since it's been removed from daily activities. You can stop blaming yourself. The system is rigged against you. The food is designed to make you overeat. The environment is designed to keep you sedentary. The marketing is designed to make unhealthy choices feel normal. Knowing this doesn't fix everything, but it helps you understand that this isn't a personal failing. It's a structural problem. The 1980s weren't perfect. Healthcare was worse. Lots of social problems existed. But the food environment was objectively healthier in ways that had nothing to do with individuals making better choices. It was just a default setting. At least you know what happened. You know why your parents' generation was slimmer. You know what changed. You know it's not your fault. If this changed how you think about food and weight, make sure you're subscribed because I'm breaking down more food industry secrets that'll completely shift your perspective on health and nutrition. Drop a comment about which reason shocked you the most. Share this with someone who needs to hear this. The problem isn't you. It never was.